Hi boys and girls, this is me and Stripey. Hi everybody. And today our book is called Longneck and Thunderfoot. If you're into dinosaurs, this is a book for you. Longneck the dinosaur lived all alone in the forest. There he is. Apart from the birds and other small animals, Longneck seemed to have the whole world to himself. He could potter about all day, and at night he could float on his back in the water, watching the stars, and nobody bothered him. One evening, Longneck was pottering as usual, when he heard a noise like a clap of thunder. It came from close by. There were sounds of splashing too, and grunts and snorts. Longneck trundled over to see what was going on. And there, splashing in the swamp, was another dinosaur. Longneck was very frightened. He had never seen another dinosaur before. He's so big. The other dinosaur was Thunderfoot. Most of the time he spent digging in the mud for roots to eat or chasing butterflies for fun. Today, Thunderfoot had chased a butterfly far from home. Snorting and grunting, he was trying to keep up with it. And every time he reached out to catch it, he missed. And his feet banged together, making a noise like a clap of thunder. Then Thunderfoot saw Longneck staring at him. Steam was coming out of Longneck's nose. He was shaking with fear, and his tail was thumping on the ground. Thumpty-thump, thumpty-thump. But Thunderfoot had never seen another dinosaur before. Thought Longneck was shaking with anger. Heavens, it's a fierce monster. And he's thumping his tail at me threateningly. And now Thunderfoot began to shake with fear, and the bony scales on his back clapped and rattled together, making a terrible din. He's making that terrible din, thought Longneck, and it's just to frighten me. Longneck's tail thumped even harder than ever. There they are, the standoff between the dinosaurs. Longneck and Thunderfoot began to circle each other warily. They would have both liked to turn their backs and run away, but they were too frightened to do that. He might attack me when I wasn't looking, they were both thinking. The sun went down and the moon came out, and still the two dinosaurs were facing each other, neither of them daring to take their eyes off the other even for a second. Then it began to rain, as it does. At last, just for a moment, Longneck took his eyes off Thunderfoot to watch a trickle of water running down his neck. That's pretty clever to see a trickle of water running down your neck, isn't it? At once, Thunderfoot leapt into the air, and with head bowed and horns pointing forward, he turned and ran away. At the same moment, Longneck lifted his tail, holding it high above his head, and ran in the opposite direction. Later that night, Longneck was trying to sleep sitting up under a tree. He couldn't float on his back in the water watching the stars as he usually did, in case Thunderfoot came after him. Tomorrow I must do some strengthening exercises for my tail, he said. And far away, Thunderfoot was hiding under the water. He kept his eyes in the open air so that he could watch out for Longneck. Tomorrow I must sharpen my horns, he was thinking. And there are the two of them, relieved but plotting and planning. The next day, Longneck worked hard on his tail exercises, and his tail got stronger and he began to feel braver. And Thunderfoot sharpened his horns. When they were as sharp as two razors, he began to feel more ready to meet Longneck again. Then they both decided to snoop around a bit just to find out what the other was doing. Now that's his tail strengthening exercise, and that's sharpening the horns. You ever have horns? That's how you sharpen them. So they were snooping around, but when Longneck saw Thunderfoot slice up a tree with his terrible horns, he didn't feel brave anymore. And when Thunderfoot saw Longneck send a tree toppling to the ground with one sweep of his tail, he crept away and hid. I must do something or he'll come and get me, they each decided. And each of them made a crafty plan. Soon Thunderfoot was digging a deep pit. He was pleased with his crafty plan. When he finished digging, Thunderfoot trundled up the hill where he waited for Longneck to come along. You'll fall in and he'll never be able to get out. At the same time, Longneck hid in a tree with his tail trailing along the path below. He'll trip over it. And then I'll give him a good swipe and get away quickly. He was pleased with his crafty plan too. Unfortunately, Thunderfoot didn't trip over Longneck's tail. He sat on it instead. That was very painful for Longneck. He was trying hard not to yell with agony, when suddenly the branch on which he was lying gave way. I mean, he was 20 tons of dinosaur, and he came crashing down on top of poor old Thunderfoot. It was like an earthquake. When Longneck toppled on top of Thunderfoot, their forest echoed and rumbled, the whole world shook as they rolled down the hill. And then at last everything quietened down again. There they are, rolling down the hill. And where do they fall? Yes, you guessed it. The only noises now were a kind of rattling din and a thumpty-thump coming from Thunderfoot's deep pit. It was a long time before Longneck heard Thunderfoot speak. His voice wasn't big and bellowing as Longneck had expected. It was a rasping little voice like his own. Are you going to eat me? Said Thunderfoot. I'm much too frightened to eat anything right now, said Longneck. Anyway, I'm vegetarian. Both dinosaurs were thinking hard now. It's not me you're frightened of, is it? Thunderfoot asked. Of course it is, sighed Longneck. Are you frightened of me, perhaps? Very, said Thunderfoot. Longneck's tail began to thump more slowly, and Thunderfoot rattled only now and then, and at last stopped altogether. That evening, Longneck was floating comfortably on the water. He was very relieved, but he did feel he'd made a fool of himself. Never mind, he thought. He was as frightened as I was. I didn't know I could thump my tail like that. Wonder if I could do it again. Nearby, Thunderfoot was snuggling in the water too. But of course, he was telling himself, he was as big a coward as me. Wonder if I could rattle like that even when I'm not afraid. Next day he tried, and he could. Longneck too found he could thump his tail whenever he chose. And then they both had the same lovely, crafty idea. As it happened, that not long after, on a clear, starry night, the forest echoed with a loud, rattling noise, and the heavy thump-de-dee, thump-thump-thump of a long tail beating out a rhythm on the ground. Somewhere in the forest, Longneck and Thunderfoot were giving a party. Yes, a party. And the birds and all the other animals of the forest had come out to sing and dance together to the beautiful music of the big, friendly dinosaurs. And that's the end of the story. Well, that's great, isn't it? How two people who fear each other can actually become friends. It'd be great if world wars and everything could be solved just like that, wouldn't it? Probably wouldn't take too much more. Have a lovely week.